Welcome back. We're previewing UCF's 2024 football schedule, and today we're joined by Scott Procter, who covers the Colorado Buffaloes for the Fort Collins Coloradoan, one of Gannett's proud affiliates. Scott, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well, Chris. I'm excited. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited for this upcoming season with an exciting Big 12 that should have a lot of parity. This matchup in particular between these two teams should be really fun. So I'm excited to talk some Big 12 football with you.
So before we talk Buffaloes, and we'll get to it, and we've got our 5 questions like we've done for each team. What is it like covering not only Colorado football right now, where it's been such a kind of a lightning rod for attention, but
Yeah.
also getting to know and cover Deion Sanders?
It's such a unique kind of once in a lifetime opportunity for sure, and it's definitely not something that I take for granted. It's something where every day you wake up, pretty much, whether it's May into June, the middle of an off season, there's going to be something going on. There's something that people are talking about when it comes to Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, and obviously even Shedeur, and obviously the Buffs football program as a whole. So you wake up every day, there's something new going on. But it's been a blast. I've been on the beat for about 6 months now, right after the 2023 season ended. So been on right as the transfer portal after the season kind of opened up, and obviously the Bucks have been very active in adding talent via the transfer portal. I'm sure we'll get into that, but it's been kind of nonstop really since about December. Spring ball was awesome to take in as well, and kind of see how some of the new faces have kind of been gelling with each other. But we're now just a month away, a little over a month away from week one here kicking off. So really excited to get things going here.
I know one of those hot topics has been the EA Sports College Football 25 game, not only for Colorado but for everybody. If EA Sports is to be believed, Colorado is going to be one of the best teams in college football this year. Uh,
Yeah.
Preseason media polls a little bit less bullish. They have them 11th as of today when we're recording this, oddly enough.
Yeah.
Uh, what do you think are realistic expectations for Colorado this coming season? What should fans and what should the national public kind of expect of this team?
I mean, expectations are, it really depends on who you ask. If you ask me, this team should at the very least be very much improved from the 4-8 record, the 1-8 finish that they had to last season. Mostly because of what we kind of alluded to earlier is the work that they've done in the transfer portal, addressing the offensive line, addressing the defensive line, addressing pass rush, obviously adding in some talent, some skill guys in the secondary and receiver spot as well. But I just think this coaching staff, obviously led by Deion Sanders, was really honest with itself about what needed to be addressed. Obviously, Shedeur was sacked 50 plus times last season, the most of any FBS quarterback, and you just can't consistently win that way. So they addressed the offensive line by adding some really experienced, talented offensive linemen who have played a lot of college football over the last few years, who should really give Shedeur more confidence in his own line. And obviously, Shedeur was really great from an individual perspective last year, despite being as sacked as much as he was, throwing for a school record 3,200 yards, 27 touchdowns, and just 3 interceptions. Is what you want, and in an NFL quarterback, being able to take care of the ball but still push the ball down the field when you're given opportunity. So I think the additions in the trenches really should help this team improve from a 4-8 team to at very least a team that should be making a bowl game with 6 wins. And I think from there, there's room even more to grow with how much parity there is in the Big 12. I think there are probably 3 teams that everybody believes in the Big 12 that are probably gonna finish in the top 3 or 4, being Oklahoma State, Kansas State, and Utah. But outside of those 3, I think there's a lot of parity. And I think Colorado will be able to steal a few games that probably right now people don't give them a chance to win.
The last year, Colorado got off to such a hot start. They were the talk of the town, the talk of college football throughout September. They were nationally ranked. They opened up with a win against TCU. They
Yeah.
followed it with a win over Nebraska, if I'm not mistaken. They followed that with a win against Colorado State,
Yeah.
where they were, riding high. And then it went so wrong so quickly when they got to conference play. The schedule caught up with them. They finished 4-8. They lost their last 6 games. So how is this coaching staff, these players, the people around the program, how are they adapting to properly handle not only adversity this coming season and where it's maybe not as chaotic as it was last year, but also to handle success and to potentially build upon it?
For sure. And I think experience is the best teacher when it comes to stuff like that, right? I feel like there were a lot of new guys in new situations last year who didn't really know or understand how to balance success while knowing that, your toughest games are still ahead of you. It's going to be a different kind of slate, from the Pac-12 last year with some really, really good quarterback play to the Big 12 this year, which also still has some really good quarterback play. But I don't think the schedule is going to be as damning, as challenging as it was last year. So that should help the Buffs in that regard. But also, too, and I kind of alluded to it, the quality of transfers that the Buffs have brought in this offseason, it's not just that they're talented players, it's that they're experienced. They're older guys, too, especially on the offensive defensive line. These guys have played a lot of football. They're not going to be, kind of suckered into, feeling themselves after a couple wins early on in the season. I think this is a really veteran group at a lot of spots. And obviously, Shedeur being the leader of it, he is at the core of what really went wrong last year in terms of, maybe feeling themselves a little too much. I don't think he's going to let that happen again and again. He has a lot of veteran, experienced guys around him who I think are going to help lead this team to, or at least prevent them from what they kind of fell victim to last year down the stretch.
I want to ask about the offensive line. That is certainly one of the biggest question marks surrounding Colorado. They have a lot of new personnel, potentially 4 new starters from a unit that gave up 58 sacks last year, the second highest total in the FBS.
Yeah.
Kind of run through some guys they've added and what can be better about this unit, and how do they plan to protect Shedeur and give him the opportunity to take advantage of some of those opportunities?
Absolutely. So I really want everybody who might be watching this to understand that offensive line that Colorado jogged out there for majority of their games is just not going to be the same offensive line this year. Those guys are no longer Colorado Buffaloes, and the guys who are Colorado Buffaloes now are just different mentally and physically. We can start on the left side. We can start with the freshman, the true freshman, the 5-star offensive tackle, Jordan Seaton, the #1 tackle in the class of 2024. He's probably going to start day one as a true freshman at left tackle, and he's already transformed his body. He was an early enrollee. He's already was a big dude coming in, but he's transformed his body to where he already looks like a Power 5 starter from day one. And obviously, he was highly touted, highly recruited, chose the Buffs over a handful of offers from some of the top programs in college football. So that's going to be your bookend left tackle to protect Shedeur's blindside. Again, that might come with some growing pains. Again, he is a true freshman. He's a young kid, but again, mentally, he's a lot more older and mature than his age suggests. That's going to help this offensive line improve. At left guard is another new guy, Tyler Brown, who actually came over from Jackson State, was an FCS All-American 2 years ago at Jackson State, blocking for Shedeur. He actually had to sit out the entirety of last season due to the 2-time transfer rule that doesn't even exist anymore. So he has really had 2 full off seasons to really kind of get in the weight room. He looks like a scary presence at that guard spot. At center, Hank Zalitzkis is the projected starter. He only played sparingly last year, again, as a true freshman. So this is a young guy with a lot of room to grow. Again, he's transformed his body, added about 20 to 30 pounds of mass and muscle this offseason. At right guard is another transfer who's projected to start, Justin Mayers. Came over from UTEP, one of PFF's highest graded transfers, particularly on the offensive line. I think he has a chance to be an all-conference performer in the Big 12 this year at right guard. Again, another leader, another guy who has, 20-plus games of starts under his belt. And at right tackle is another transfer, another big guy, 6'6" Khalil Benson, has a bunch of starts under his belt in the Big 10 at Indiana. And then again, there's a bunch of depth behind them. That's the biggest thing. They've added talent in the projected starters, but there are about 3 to 6 really guys behind them who really would be potentially starting at other programs, who will be counted on because, as we know, injuries happen. They'll be counted on, to fill in when injuries happen this season. And I think that's the biggest change from last year to this year on the offensive line. The talent has improved for sure, but I think the depth is really what's going to help Shedeur be better protected this year.
I think Jordan Seaton's one of the most intriguing players to watch in college football this year.
No
To
doubt.
start at left tackle with that much visibility, to
Hmm.
come in freshman, and potentially have to go head to head with some of the best pass rushers in this league. It's going to be really intriguing to watch. He's obviously got a world's worth of ability, but that's going to
Right.
be a by 5-8. When you look at the transfer portal, I know Colorado is kind of one of those teams at the forefront of it. They've used it to overhaul the roster each of the last 2 years. Aside from the offensive line, who are some of the other guys they've picked up out of the portal that you think are going to make an immediate impact for them by the time we get to August and September?
For sure. A few guys immediately come to mind. I'll start on the defensive side of the ball because we kind of talked a little bit about the offense. I'll start in the secondary at corner. Colorado's highest graded transfer, regardless of position, is a cornerback in Preston Hodge, who came over from Liberty, who was really good the last couple of seasons, had an awesome pass coverage grade by Pro Football Focus. He's going to be counted in to really be that stalwart corner opposite Travis Hunter. He's really given Travis Hunter the ability to move around a lot. You can expect to see Travis Hunter play a lot in the slot, maybe shadow some guys who may be playing, in this slot, from other teams. So Preston Hodge is probably the guy that's going to make Colorado secondary really elite. And also another corner, DJ McKinney, who you might be familiar with, played at Oklahoma State last year as a either a true or a redshirt freshman. Excuse me if I'm not 100% sure on that, but he started and played a bunch for Oklahoma State team that made the Big 12 championship game. And again, he's been talked about as a leader this spring. So those are three guys in your secondary, three corners in your secondary: Travis Hunter, Preston Hodge, DJ McKinney, who are experienced and really talented, should make this secondary really impressive. And then the pass rush is going to be really improved because of guys like BJ Green, who led Arizona State in sacks last year. A couple guys from Pitt, Samuel Okunlola, who's really has people excited. He led Pitt in sacks last year. Deion Hayes really turned down a lucrative NIL offer from Pitt, who would have been probably their best returning defensive player this year. Deion Hayes, he's now with the Buffs. He led Pitt in tackles for loss last season. So those are just three guys who are going to improve this pass rush. A couple guys are going to improve the secondary. And at the second level of defense as well, Nikai Hill-Green led Charlotte in solo tackles last season. People might hear, "Oh, Charlotte, that's not real football." A couple years prior to that, he was at Michigan, started a handful of games at Michigan for their college football playoff team. So again, this is another experienced linebacker, a leader. So somebody impactful additions at all three levels of that defense who we could expect to really make a difference here this fall.
A handful of UCF fans will know the name Nikai Hill-Green because he was committed to the Knights out of the transfer portal
True.
from Charlotte process, and then ended up backing off of that commitment and then found his way over to Colorado. So
Yeah.
his season monitored, I'm sure, by UCF fans. Lastly, we talked about expectations coming into the season, whether it's bowl eligibility or beyond. What do you feel is the most important goal or benchmark for this program, given some of the lofty expectations, given some of the lofty talk that's been surrounding this program since Deion Sanders took over? What do you feel is the most important thing to accomplish for this team this coming season?
I think it'll be simply just to get to a bowl game, to be playing meaningful football late in the season. And I don't think that's even really a lofty goal at this point with everything we've kind of highlighted in terms of the additions via the transfer portal. I really do think that this team has a ceiling of higher than, 6 or 7 wins, or higher than just a simple, bowl berth. So I think this team has a lot of potential. A lot of that will depend on how the coaching kind of pans out, because obviously there's a new offensive coordinator, Pat Shermer. He was there last year more as an analyst, but now he's a full-time offensive coordinator. Defensive coordinator Rob Livingston is new, a first-time play caller, a first-time defensive coordinator, but he spent the last handful of years in the NFL learning under one of the NFL's best defensive coordinators in Lou Anarumo with the Cincinnati Bengals. So Livingston, obviously has potential as well. So I think this coaching staff has a tall task on his hands to get the most out of the talent they brought in through the transfer portal. because there's no denying that there's a bunch of talent on this roster. Starting with one of the best quarterbacks in college football, who's going to be a first-round draft pick next year. Travis Hunter's also going to be a first-round draft pick next year. He can make impacts on both sides of the ball that can't be understated. And Travis Hunter also missed 3 games last year. I don't know if that's going to happen again this year. That should have worked in the Buffs' favor as well, at least a little bit. So I think there's a lot to like about this team. I think them being picked 11th in the Big 12 preseason poll, I think is I think just a little unfair, and I think it's more of a result of people not really knowing about the caliber of players that were brought in via the transfer portal. But I think at minimum, a bowl game appearance is what fans can expect.
Pat Shermer, for those that are unaware, twice an NFL head coach, once with the Cleveland Browns, once with the New York Giants. Yep. Let's talk this game head-to-head. Obviously, it's a ways away. It is a sold-out game already. UCF fans took all the tickets that were available. It's going to be probably the signature home game of the season for UCF fans. They're going to be obviously hyped up to cheer on their own team and maybe cheer against Deion and his. What do you see out of this game? It'll be a big test for Colorado early in the year on the road. I'm not sure if this is their conference opener, but it'll certainly be early in the season and potentially set a tone.
Yeah, it's not their conference opener. I believe CU opens the Big 12 slate with Baylor. But yeah, it'll be a fun game. It's definitely one of the games I'm most looking forward to being at and covering. I think an underrated part about this matchup in particular is that Colorado has a lot of Florida connections on the roster, both on the roster and the coaching staff as well. And I think a lot of the CU Buffs players and coaches will be fired up to be back in the state of Florida, probably playing in front of a lot of friends and family, being around a lot of friends and family. So I think that's an underrated kind of part about this matchup in particular. But I think this game, I like to think, as a former college quarterback myself, I like to think about football in simple terms. And I think this matchup in particular is going to be decided by the quarterbacks. I think how well the Buffs defense and that pass rush I mentioned can get to and affect KJ Jefferson, I think is going to be a big deciding factor in this game. I think how Kobe Hudson is a really good player, somebody who I like. I think has caliber to be an all-conference player this year. I think how he is defended by some of the guys that I mentioned, Travis Hunter, Preston Hodge, DJ McKinney, is going to be a storyline to watch in particular. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored in this one, though, to be honest with you, and I think that's going to make for a fun, exciting atmosphere.
You have a prediction? You have a score you want to throw out, or at least a winner here? I know we're several weeks away from that game, 2 full months from that game, but let's
sure.
get the forward to, right?
No score prediction as of right now. We got to get a little bit closer for that, but as of right now, I'm picking Colorado to win that game. Again, I believe they have the better quarterback. I believe they're going to be extra motivated again with a lot of those guys playing in front of friends and family in their home state. So give me the Buffs in a high-scoring game. That should be a lot of fun to watch.
I'm going to go the other way. I think UCF at home, they are a very good home team traditionally. I mentioned that atmosphere will be very, very boisterous, I think is a good word to use. It's sold out, like I mentioned. This will be a good test for Colorado. You mentioned how they come from playing against a lot of upper quality passing offenses. This will be a great test how good they are against the run. UCF has 2 of the 10 rushers in college football, and R.J. Harvey and Penny Boone. Of course, KJ Jefferson at 6'3" and 250 pounds is a load to try to bring down as well. So this will be a different type of offense for Colorado to have to contend with. And so long as UCF can open up some holes, I think that they're going to be able to pop off some big run plays. I'm going to lean Knights, but Colorado, I think, just purely based on talent, can match up with anybody in this league. We'll see how it all comes together as cohesion is concerned.
And that's a good point you bring up about the running game, because that's going to be a major storyline for the Buffs this season, because in the Big 12 in particular, a handful of teams, especially at the top of the conference, they pack a running game. Thinking about Oklahoma State with Ali Gordon, Kansas State, Kansas as well with Jalen Daniels and their stable of backs as well. You mentioned UCF. Yeah, a handful of other teams. So pretty much every week in the Big 12, Colorado is going to have If not a really good quarterback, for sure, a really strong running game to defend it and think about. So that's going to be something to watch this season for sure.
Well, that concludes this preview ahead of time, opponent preview of Colorado. I want to thank Scott Procter again from the Fort Collins Coloradoan for joining us. Scott, tell the people where they can find your work and find you on social media as well.
Absolutely. You can give me a follow my work on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Scott Procter _ Procter, spelled with an E instead of an O. And then obviously you can follow my work at Coloradoan.com for all the latest Buffs content and whatnot. Christopher, it was great chopping it up with you. I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for doing it. UCF fans will have more content for you throughout the summer. And if you want to follow me, it's at Chris Boyle DBNJ on X as well. And we will see you the next time.